Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Resilio Connect webinar. I'm Adam Krantz. I'm delighted to have Josh Sargent, our VP of Sales, join us for You're Syncing Us Wrong, a webinar exclusively for MSP and reseller partners and for people who are managing NetApp storage. I'm delighted to actually kind of redo this webinar. Originally, about a month and a half ago, Josh and I were at the NetApp Insight Conference in Las Vegas, where we had a full house for the technical learning session on this very topic, and we had so much enthusiasm for it, we decided to do a live webinar version of it as well. So here we are today. Josh is going to get us started in just a second, but some quick housekeeping. We have a Q&A button at the very bottom of your screen. Go ahead and click on that and submit your questions during the course of today's presentation. Josh and I will take a look at that throughout the webinar today and type responses in our Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Josh, and You're Syncing It Wrong. Hey, Josh, take it away.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for giving us the time today and showing up. And as Adam mentioned, I give this presentation at NetApp Insight. A lot of people, we got a lot of people in our booth on the show floor that said, oh, I didn't know you guys were doing a session, or I wish I could have gotten to it, but I was in another session. So, hopefully you can get what you missed or share it with colleagues who weren't able to be there or aren't able to be here. But let me jump right into it. I'll share my screen. The title of the talk is "You're Syncing It Wrong," right? What's possible with peer-to-peer, and the point of this is I suppose to be a little bit provocative, but really get people thinking about how we synchronize data today, what the sort of new challenges are in data synchronization, and how Resilio can help you or your customers solve those challenges. I came from a career as a storage solution architect, helping customers design storage solutions to solve a lot of challenges. And there's just a lot of them out there, a lot of scenarios out there that traditional storage can't solve. And so Resilio fills a lot of those gaps. And I'm here to talk to you today about a lot of those use cases, a lot of those scenarios where I wish I had known about Resilio earlier on and could have solved many more interesting customer challenges. So I don't know, just as an icebreaker, if we could poll the audience, and maybe there is some poll function here in the webinar, but I'm not aware of it. So I'll just, anybody have teenagers? I've got 3 teenagers. Just to get to know me, I've got 3 teenagers, and all of whom I like to embarrass. And if you don't have teenagers or have never had teenagers, you probably have had parents, I assume, at some point in your life. Me too, surprise, surprise, and parents that I disappoint. And I want to frame this juxtaposition just like as a little bit of comedic relief here, but this juxtaposition of teenagers that are telling me one thing and parents that are telling me sort of the opposite thing. And I think this happens a lot in our our roles helping customers solve these thinking challenges. And so I'm here to tell you all the ways, just like my teenagers tell me all the ways I'm doing it wrong, my parents tell me all the ways I'm doing it wrong. I'm here to tell you all the ways you're syncing it wrong. And the problem is you're not syncing it fast. You're not syncing it slow. You're not syncing big, and you're not syncing small, and you're not syncing now, and you're not even syncing then. You're not syncing hot data, you're not syncing cold data, you're not syncing here, and you're not syncing there, you're not syncing everywhere. You're not even syncing anywhere. Maybe you're syncing too much, maybe you're syncing not enough. Maybe you're not syncing at all. I don't know. If that's the case, then I don't know. I don't have much to help you with. But there's also this problem of somebody else syncing it for you, and you didn't even know about it. And that's usually when your end users start bringing in these solutions, kind of shadow IT solutions, to do things that your IT department's not sort of unable to achieve for them. But how did we get here? How did we get to this place where we can't sync in all these ways? Maybe we can sync in some of them, but just a real quick kind of history of data synchronization. I go back as far as like open systems. That's as far as I go. So you get the very basics of copying files back in the origins of Unix, and eventually you get to remote copy, right, which is copying files over the network. Only as far back as the 80s, and then you get sort of iteration and innovation on file transfer protocols, and we get sort of slowly get better at it. Actually, kind of rapidly get better at it. In 90, you get the World Wide Web, right? But really, what we're talking about, most of us in our roles, we're dealing with I don't know, storage-based replication, and really the genesis of that was SRDF with EMC back in 1990, believe it or not. And then shortly after that, you get SnapMirror with ONTAP, and all the major storage platforms today have some sort of block-based. Usually, it's snapshot-based replication, but not always. But block-based replication, and and then you've got tools like rsync, which are still, I mean, you'd be amazed at how much rsync is still used today by companies. And this is 30-year-old technology, 35-year-old technology, but it's still kind of like state of the art, right? This is it's a little bit I don't know, eye-opening, I suppose, to realize how much of the world's data synchronization, data replication happens on technology that's 30, 35 years old. Nothing wrong with that, but I think given the insane growth of data, insane sort of new use cases for data, and how companies need to leverage their data as their most important asset, it's important that we enable our customers to get that data where they need it when they need it. And using something a little more modern, scalable, what have you, than sort of ancient technology. So that brings us to sort of the millennium, right? And then we had the world had these millennial challenges, and now I'm not talking about these millennials. I'm talking about well, I'm not even talking about these millennial challenges, right? The Y2K thing was a big deal, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the great world challenge to download movies. That's what really sort of changed the game in the new requirement to sync massive amounts of data at massive scale. People wanted to download movies and music on the internet, right? And so this sort of new class of data synchronization tool, data transfer tool, was born, and BitTorrent certainly is the biggest and most successful name there, and it sort of pioneered this peer-to-peer architecture that I mentioned in the title of this. Peer-to-peer, if you're not familiar with peer-to-peer architecture, it is a sort of a system where all the nodes that are participating are acting as both clients and servers. So they're actively downloading data from lots of their peers, not just a single source or even a couple sources, but a swarm of sources. And they're also, in turn, sharing chunks of their data to all their peers, so that you can swarm massive amounts of data to massive numbers of devices. And that happened in 2001, and it was an absolute game changer in the world's internet traffic, right? And the ability to transfer massive amounts of data. And at its peak, this was it was responsible for something like 35% of the world's global internet traffic, which is insane. Of course, this is before YouTube and Netflix and these huge properties that now sort of dominate. But even as recently as 2018, it's still responsible for over 20% of upstream traffic from end users, and 2022. Still the number one source of global upstream traffic. It's just massive, and in terms of number of devices or number of users, it's also massive in terms of scale, not just how much data it transfers, but just in terms of number of devices that are using the architecture and the protocol. So BitTorrent. If we think about an exabyte and how long it takes to transfer an exabyte, SD video at 1 megabits per second, if you need to transfer an exabyte of that, it's going to take you a really long time. You get higher and higher throughput rates like HD video, It's still going to take you thousands of years. YouTube transfers about an exabyte of data every, almost 2 years. BitTorrent does it every month, an exabyte of data every month. It's just massive in scale. So what? Why do you care? It's really not interesting to IT, like the ability to swarm massive amounts of data to millions of devices. That's not super interesting to most IT departments. All right, except how to block it, or how to block users from using their bandwidth to transfer movies and things. Not interesting, right? Well, it's not interesting until your customers or your end users start going out and using and they discover that there are these other solutions on the marketplace that can do real-time synchronization and do it at massive scale and provide features and functionality that their IT departments sort of can't, right? And so they get pretty upset when you can't do it, and so they go find their own solutions. And you get this sort of compounded with the crazy growth rate of the types of files, the size of the files. I'm using video here because it's a simple sort of analog to use as an example. But you get this sort of not doubling but quadrupling of file size or more, because we keep getting higher and higher def, and we keep doing higher and higher frame rates, right? Which requires more capacity, and you're doing high dynamic range now. So you get all these sort of compounding factors that just keep sort of dramatically increasing the amount of data that we need to transfer all the time now. And again, the video thing is just an example. The same thing happens in sort of the medical world, right? Where you've got customer imaging, and it's not just about images, or patient imaging. It's not just about images. It's about all kinds of things, all kinds of data sets that just grow massively. We all know this. I don't need to tell you about the massive growth rate of data. You all know it intuitively. You've got new types of workloads, AI and machine learning. You got IoT and sort of these edge use cases where you're sort of ingesting tons of data from these small devices at the edge, or doing compute at the edge. You've got, maybe the best example I can think of here is this whole new world of self-driving cars, right? And where you've got cars with tons of sensors on them, cameras on them, many cameras, tons of sensors that, as these companies are sort of figuring out how to optimize self-driving cars, they're collecting tons of sensor data from these fleets of cars that are out driving around. And the question is, how do you get that data back to some compute cluster where you can run ML algorithms on it and try to sort of optimize, how you're, what kinds of decisions that these vehicles are making. It's again, just one example, but the idea is, I think, cuts across all industries. You've got all these new sources of data, and it's massive. And you need a way to get that data to the place where you can compute it. So the world is doing much more interesting things with their data. So we need to be moving that data in much more interesting ways that enables all that. And so that's where Resilio comes in. So just so you know, Resilio, we sort of all come from BitTorrent, our founders do. And the idea was, how do we take this this amazing peer-to-peer architecture that has changed the world in terms of syncing massive amounts of data, and how do we take that architecture and these protocols and apply them to the enterprise in a way that's useful to enterprises? And that's how Resilio was born. And you see our some of our co-founders here, Eric and Alon and Constantine, and that was sort of the vision of Resilio at the start. We're founded in 2016. There are no ties to BitTorrent anymore, but you understand the sort of the background, the history of Resilio. It's all about bringing this peer-to-peer architecture to the enterprise. And I'm Josh. Adam introduced you to me earlier. I sort of handle our sales team and our partnerships. So I got a lot of experience in the channel, and I understand a lot of attendees here today are either from storage vendor partners like NetApp, or from maybe VAR resellers, and some of you, I think, maybe are also customers that use this NetApp technology in particular. But what we're all about is bringing that peer-to-peer architecture to build these high performance file delivery and access solutions for extraordinary environments. It could be massive data centers. It could be you know, active requirements in lots of different data centers, hybrid cloud, could be at the edge. A lot of our really kind of noteworthy or like fun story type use cases happen at the edge, just because they're very interesting and very difficult to accomplish any other way. But Resilio has been around, like I said, since about 2016, and we've got a lot of great customers. And I'm not sure if there are any currently active customers in the webinar here today, but if there are, thank you. But we have customers really ranging across all industries and all sizes. We've got massive, Fortune 100 companies as customers, and we also have very small organizations with a handful of people as customers. So it scales from very small to extremely large, and I think it's pretty fair to say you're going to see some customer quotes in the presentation. Pretty fair to say that customers who have discovered Resilio absolutely love it, and are very vocal about it, and become sort of cheerleaders for Resilio. And I hope that if you haven't tried Resilio, you'll try it after this and become something of a fan as well. But Resilio Connect is the name of the product that we're talking about today. So Resilio is a company. Connect is the enterprise product, which is really a pretty simple product focused on syncing data. And it's but not just syncing data in the way that you might be used to, like say with SnapMirror, right? We do real-time synchronization. We do omnidirectional synchronization, which means we can sync in any direction with any number of peers. We can do, if you just want to sort of do one-to-one transfers, one-to-one synchronization, no problem. We can do that. If you want to do one to many, we can do that. If you want to do many back to one, we can do that. But the kind of the really neat thing is we can do any to any. So you can have massive numbers of devices all syncing the same data, not just active passive. We can do active passive, but by default, we're active active. In other words, you've got changes happening in all those locations, and we're keeping them all in sync, which is a huge game changer, and not something that's possible with something like SnapMirror or really any storage-based replication. You're typically limited to one-to-one. Maybe you can have two sites, but you're almost certainly limited to active passive, right? Like SnapMirror, for instance, where you're only actively making changes and writing in one location, and the secondary site is totally passive. You can't do anything with it until you declare failover and failover, and then you got to fail back, right? But that's not Resilio. We're doing active active. And it's peer-to-peer, which is a big game changer. And I'm going to explain to you how peer-to-peer sort of enables a lot of these really cool technologies and features that customers love. One of those things is that it makes it extremely scalable. So with peer-to-peer, of course, we can sync the same amount of data to 100,000 devices just as fast as we can sync it to one device. And so we can go really fast, and it's not just about peer-to-peer. We've got our own WAN acceleration protocols, and I'll tell you about some of those soon. And of course, we've got some data efficiency technologies built in, so we're transferring less data over the wire to be faster and more efficient. And of course, high availability and resiliency is key. But it's also important that the tool is reliable, flexible, and you've got tons of insight into what's going on with your data synchronization. That's sort of the Achilles heel of a lot of these tools that are out there today, is that some of them can sync some data, but you don't, they're kind of black boxes. You don't really know what's going on, what the status is. You really got to spend a lot of time digging to find out what's going on. So we provide centralized control, tons of visibility, tons of instrumentation, and of course, security is built in. It's a very simple tool, so it's not something that requires formal education and certification in order to operate. Right? It's a very simple tool, and really, there's two parts to the solution. Just to illustrate the simplicity, there's the management console, which is it's providing just like a simple modern web interface for administrators to come and sort of see everything and configure everything. So you're coming here to sort of configure these synchronization jobs that you want to have running, and you're viewing dashboards and statuses of all these things in real time, so you can see exactly what the status of your synchronization is, which files have been successfully synced, and which ones are not synced yet. They're in queue to be synced next, and which ones are syncing right now this very second. What's the ETA until this particular node is going to be in sync? Based on sort of current network throughput and things like that. We just provide a ton of instrumentation here. So the management console is not doing the work of synchronizing the data. It's not in the data path. It's not storing any of your data. It's really just, it's the management plane. It's giving instructions to the agents and collecting logs from the agents. But it's great. So you got centralized control of the entire environment, and the agents, that's the second part of the solution. The agents are the ones that are actually doing all the work of synchronizing data. So you're installing agents on really any major platform, Windows, Linux, Mac, BSD, others. And these agents are the ones that are talking directly to each other, syncing data directly between each other in a peer-to-peer sort of swarming fashion, right? And that's where all the heavy lifting happens. And they check with the management console to get their instructions and send their logs to it. But the agents do all the sort of the heavy lifting. And so it's just a simple two-part solution, and it's just incredibly scalable. But we're focused on, just to be clear, we're focused on unstructured data. These are files. So that's one of the reasons that we pair so well with a solution like NetApp, or Isilon, or really any of these enterprise or NAS vendors. But also, of course, if you're using SAN, you can install an agent on the host, which is mounting the volume. But we're focused on synchronizing unstructured data. The point is to make it universally accessible wherever you need it, wherever your customer needs it. We don't necessarily have to do full syncs of all the files everywhere. We can sync on demand and sort of in a thin, caching way if we need to. There's tons of flexibility, but the point is we're enabling customers to access, use, read, and write their data wherever they need to, whenever they need to. And that could be on-prem, it could be in the data center, it could be in the office, it could be at, hybrid work is a big thing these days. So you got workers that are working from home and they need to access data that's in the data center or up in the cloud. They need to collaborate between each other. It could be at the edge, it could be in retail stores, restaurants, wherever. The point is we're providing access to that data everywhere. I'm going to sort of gloss over the feature overview and we'll get into it, but tons of features that, all the trimmings and trappings you would expect for an enterprise tool set, things like, API, 100% coverage, with our API to enable you to use this tool, not just the GUI and as it is out of the box, but really integrated into your custom workflow. And we'll get into some of those scenarios in a minute. But when you think about the sort of the file replication or data replication or data synchronization marketplace, right? There's a lot of tools out there that do data synchronization, right? Data movement of some kind. And, we try to sort of put them in these buckets of like the types of tools that they are. Are they just doing server and storage replication? Are they like what we call sync and share type solutions, which is more like collaboration type workflows. There's other tools out there that focus just on being really good and really fast at file transfer. It's not really synchronization where you're keeping things in sync. It's just like, how fast can I send this one file? And then you've got these slightly newer model tools, which are kind of like global file systems, where you're putting sort of all your data in one place and having sort of a single golden copy of all your data, and then caching the data and making it available thinly out there wherever you need it. And Resilio, you see at the bottom, we don't compete directly with any of these tools necessarily. We kind of span across all of these buckets, and you can use Resilio in a number of different use cases, which might end up sort of competing with some of these tools, or maybe not competing, but also sometimes complementing some of these solutions. And so, like I mentioned, we've got a number of customers, some really big customers that use the tool and love it. And I just want to point out a couple of what I think are some of the best customer quotes that we've gotten. You've got McDonald's, who had a security incident in their environment, and they needed to very quickly roll out patches to thousands and thousands of machines. And you can imagine, how quickly you need to respond and react and patch thousands and thousands of machines. Without peer-to-peer, this becomes a massive sort of challenge with lots of bottlenecks that slow the process way down. They said we've never seen anything as fast as Resilio Connect. A lot of companies use us for this purpose exactly, which is they use some tooling to handle patch distribution or updates, things like that. But they use Resilio as the sort of the data mover to make it extremely fast. You got Cisco, who had actually a big network infrastructure outage. Everything else was down except Resilio Connect. So it speaks to our reliability a little bit. And then I had to take this logo off, but it's a large Fortune 100 sort of construction/manufacturing firm. And they were trying to do VDI profile replication. A lot of customers out there doing VDI today, and they wanted to do sort of active VDI, enable the users to log into any site where they had VDI infrastructure, where there was a few on-prem data centers or a few cloud instances. And like I said, there's a lot of data transfer, data synchronization tools out there. A lot of them aren't optimized to handle very high speed or very large data sets, and so they weren't able to achieve what their infrastructure was capable of. And they were only getting about 2.5 gigabits per second throughput with the previous solution. Put Resilio Connect in and got 8, which is a pretty marked improvement. So I want to run through just a few use cases. Time check here. I want to run through just a few use cases that are common. So now you sort of understand what Resilio Connect is and kind of vaguely what it does. Here are a few ways that customers use us, and that are some of the more popular ways. Remote work is a big use case. Became really popular during COVID and remains popular with sort of hybrid work. And it happens to be kind of popular in the media and entertainment industry with collaboration with a lot of remote editors and artists, et cetera. But it's really applicable in all industries where there's remote work. And you can these Resilio agents, I want to just point out, you have them installed on servers in the data center or in the cloud or wherever, and you can use them to synchronize servers. But you can also install those Resilio agents on end user devices, laptops and desktops, right? And choose to sync files on demand very quickly without the need for a VPN, which is huge for remote work, and sort of very efficiently, very quickly, and with a high degree of availability because of the peer-to-peer architecture. And so when you've got sort of distributed team working on very large data set sizes, video editing, audio editing, things like this, speed becomes really important. And so Turner Sports Broadcasting is one of them. Let's see here. Skywalker Sound, another one. These guys use Resilio in some pretty interesting ways. Again, mostly to handle sort of their distributed team and doing audio editing. But they leverage Resilio and sort of our API and automation capabilities in ways that are pretty inspiring, and they're pretty vocal about it. So Skywalker Sound's another example of this. But really, it all started with this remote work use case, enabling users to work from home and wherever they are. And that's all enabled because of the peer-to-peer architecture, right? So where you've got this sort of BitTorrent-like peer-to-peer architecture where all of the nodes are participating and serving and getting data from each other. It's great for collaboration. It's great for speed. It's also great for scale, right? The more devices you add, the faster everything gets, as opposed to a traditional client-server type architecture where the more devices you add, sort of the more pressure you're putting on some central server, right, or some central network connection. And the slower everything gets, right? Peer-to-peer solves that. But it's also, security is built in. When you're syncing over the public internet, you got to have, very strong encryption built into the tool. So you can not have to rely on a VPN, which is a huge improvement over the situation prior to COVID, where maybe VPNs were sized to support maybe 10% of the workload or their user base. So the ability to not have to have a VPN and still synchronize data securely over the internet, that's it's a game changer. Edge use cases are a big deal. So you've got maritime companies, shipping companies, right, where you're needing to sync data to far off remote locations. ExxonMobil's a great example here. These guys were trying to synchronize large, 100 gig VHD files out to like their offshore platforms that are out in the middle of the ocean over satellite connections with, I don't know, 2,000 millisecond latencies, like 2 full milliseconds of latency. And you can imagine that trying to transfer these very large files was not very successful. When it was successful, it would take over a month or many weeks, right, to successfully transfer a file that size over a connection like that. But Resilio is optimized. It's not just about peer-to-peer. We also have our own protocol that we use, WAN acceleration protocol. It's UDP based that happens to handle very high latency extremely well. And also it has to do with the way we sort of chunk up files and synchronize chunks of files, and we're hashing these chunks and validating these chunks so that when you lose connection in the middle of a transfer, you're 90 gigs through a 100 gig file, and you lose connection for a few minutes, which happens a lot on satellite connections. We don't have to restart at the beginning and retransfer data ever. We never resynchronize data that we've already synced. We can just pick right back up where we left off, right in the middle of a file, not resync even any chunks of data that have already been synchronized. It's very efficient. And that enables enables customers to get big synchronization jobs done out to lots of remote locations over kind of really any networking conditions. So big in maritime for kind of the same reason. Anytime you got lots of remote locations, also retail. McDonald's is a great example of syncing data out to lots of devices and restaurants. But really, that file chunking technology, the hashing, the persistency, like we're going to keep retrying until the transfer is successful, regardless of how many times you drop the connection. Our ZGT protocol is a big deal here. These things matter to these types of use cases. Last mile, where you think of last mile a little bit differently than edge, which is where you've got a location, say a branch bank or a restaurant, like a McDonald's, right, where that McDonald's may not have a super fast internet connection, but and you don't think of a McDonald's as like a data center, but it's kind of like a mini data center. It's got a lot of devices in there that need data, right? It might be 30, 40, 50 machines in each one of these retail locations, right? You've got these digital signs, these digital kiosks, you've got all the kitchen machines, you've got staff training machines, you've got digital menus. There's lots of compute devices that require constant synchronizing of files. You need to update POS systems. You need to ingest all the POS data from that day, so you can process it centrally. Tons of things. You need to send updates out. How do you do that? How do you update 1,000 locations? This started in Australia with McDonald's, but how do you synchronize a 20 gig OS image out to a restaurant and update, say, 30, 40 devices? You don't want to transfer that 20 gig image 30 times over that slow connection. You want to sync it one time, and then once the data is in the location, then sort of swarm it to all the peers, right, and get it done really quickly. That's kind of what last mile does. You can do that same thing in the data center to update thousands and thousands of servers extremely quickly with very low latency. And this is just a game changer for any organization that has lots and lots of remote locations with devices. Again, sometimes maritime, I mentioned maritime as sort of edge, but we also have some maritime customers that are more like last mile, right? They want to sync the file one time to the ship that's out at sea, and then synchronize it to all the devices on the ship. They can patch their devices extremely quickly. This is really important. The centralized management's a big deal to customers like this, right? All the instrumentation, the insight, you can see what the status of your update is when you need to roll out security patches really quickly to respond to an incident. You care, like every minute counts, and you want to know, and execs want to know how long until this is done. And it's not just about, it's not always about going fast. Sometimes it's being prudent with the bandwidth that you have available to you at different times of the day, right? The data synchronization, file synchronization is not necessarily the only thing that you're going to use your network connection for. And so we give you the ability to prioritize and sort of set a schedule based on time of day and day of week of exactly how much bandwidth you want us to use at different times of the day. So, you can think of like during business hours, maybe you throttle us back a little bit, and after hours, you ramp it up and let us have all the bandwidth. Maybe you got a backup window and you want to pause us completely. We give you that control. Okay, so you guys are storage sellers. You're thinking, okay, so you told me about syncing data to ships and restaurants and things. That's not what I focus on, right? I get it. So what? What I want you to think about by the end of this presentation is RRR. Resilio removes roadblocks to getting your deals done. As NetApp sellers, or as maybe NetApp customers, or NetApp partners that are helping customers with these solutions. A lot of times you do a great job of sort of architecting a solution for a customer or architecting your own solution. But there's some roadblock that's preventing you from getting from where you are today to where you want to be, the architecture that you want. Maybe you're starting out a cloud journey, right? You're going to do some migration to the cloud. There's some roadblock, like, okay, we know what we want to do, but we got a lot of data, and we've got a complicated application stack. How are we going to accomplish it? Getting there, and so I want to tell you about some things, some use cases that might be a little more in your wheelhouse that you deal with every day, or week in and week out. And one of those is active-active VDI. I talked a little bit about that with one of our customers, but this is really popular, especially with larger and larger VDI environments and global companies. But that they've invested in VDI infrastructure in one location, and probably also invested in some VDI infrastructure in a secondary location, or maybe the cloud, and that secondary infrastructure is kind of sitting there doing nothing, waiting for an outage to start pointing data to it, or end users to it. And that's primarily because there aren't really any good solutions out there to be synchronizing these user profile containers in a way that allows active use of them, right? Where you've got some users accessing VDI infrastructure in location A, and also some users in B. When they log out and log back in, you want to be able to be redirected to any site and use any of that infrastructure at any time. Not only after a declared disaster event and a failover, right? You just want them to be able to use all the infrastructure you have seamlessly. And in order to do that, you need to be real good about replicating data quickly to many locations in an active way. And that's exactly what Resilio does. And so we enable this active VDI infrastructure in a way that makes it possible for customers, especially large VDI environments, to accomplish. And again, we do this really quickly, and there's metrics that are really important in VDI projects, like time to desktop. And when you think about measuring the success of a VDI environment, time to desktop is kind of everything. And you can see here, moving from FS Logic's Cloud Cache, which is kind of the other most popular solution out there for active, we can perform substantially better. Hybrid multi-cloud, right? Everybody's doing this, right? The question is, how are you synchronizing on-prem to cloud, or cloud to cloud, between regions, or between zones within a region, right? Can you sync between file stores and object stores? And the answer is yes. We sync anywhere. We're sort of platform agnostic. We want our customers to be able to use Resilio Connect to sync their data wherever they need it to go. That might be on Amazon, it might be on Google, it might be on ANF in Azure. Maybe they've got a dual cloud strategy, and they want to sync between ANF and GCNV, Google Cloud, NetApp Volumes, right? Or they want to sync to Amazon S3 and on-prem. Whatever it is, one of the best benefits of Resilio Connect, in my opinion, when designing a solution for customers, is that there is no vendor lock-in. There is no platform lock-in. You can synchronize your data anywhere to any cloud provider, storage platform, whatever, And we're not writing data in any sort of proprietary way. We're writing it always in its native format. You can use Resilio Connect to synchronize everything today, and you can rip Resilio Connect right out the very next day and still have 100% native access to your data. And that's a big difference between us and a lot of the other solutions that are out there on the market. And one of the ways that customers are leveraging this ability is in this caching gateway architecture, where they've got maybe a golden copy of the data up in the cloud or in the data center somewhere, and they have maybe a remote smaller office where dozens or hundreds of users. They don't want to synchronize all the data, 100% of the data. They just want to sort of cache the hot data that's out there and do it on demand in a thin way. And that's exactly what our caching gateway functionality does. Again, still using peer-to-peer. We call it transparent selective sync, which is the sort of thin on-demand syncing. And you're able to do that with say a file server in an office. Call it a caching gateway. But you can do the same thing. You can use this transparent selective sync functionality on your own laptop, for instance. So I can have Resilio Connect agent on my laptop, and I'm accessing petabytes of data in the data center or in the cloud, but I'm only syncing on demand the files that I'm opening when I need them. Another really interesting use case is automated build distribution, right? Or really anything where you've got complicated sort of CI/CD pipelines maybe that are automating some distribution of data to lots of devices. And we see a lot of this in software companies, tech companies, gaming companies, right? Where they're building video games, for instance, right? And as they're iterating through their game builds, they go to a build cluster, and this whole process, CI/CD pipeline sort of process gets kicked off, and a new game build gets built, and maybe it's 50 gigs, and now I need to get that build out to 100 or 1,000 QA testing devices for testing, right? And a number of gaming customers come to us and say, we can't do this fast enough. We spend millions of dollars on all flash enterprise storage, but when we slam it with 2,000 QA devices trying to all get the same file at the same time, it just brings it to its knees, and it takes too much time. How do we improve it? And the answer is peer-to-peer. There is no faster way to sync files like this to hundreds or thousands of devices. There is no faster way than peer-to-peer. And so our API gives these customers the ability to build us right into their pipelines and use us to distribute these builds extremely quickly to thousands of devices. And that's all enabled by our API and scripting capabilities. Sort of integrations with the popular tool sets or tool chains that are out there. But also data migration, right? Data migration, everybody needs to migrate data at some point. You're understanding that Resilio is really good at syncing files and folders, right? Can I use it for data migration? A lot of times is the first thing that comes to your mind. And yes, we'll do this, but really only because you guys always ask us. You really want to use Resilio Connect to migrate data, because even though there are tons of data migration tools out there, they fall down either with extremely huge data sets, or they can't go fast enough. We can go really, really fast, 10 gigabits per second per agent. And we can scale that out to lots of agents, because again, we're peer-to-peer. So we can distribute that data, that workload over lots of agents and sync in parallel and go extremely fast, hundreds of gigabits per second. And so you've designed an architecture where we're going to migrate from on-prem to the cloud. That's great until you got to figure out how long it's going to take you to migrate that data to the cloud. And also, most data migrations today aren't like one and done cutovers. They're long projects that require a lot of time to cut different stages of the application stack over. And during those many months that you're doing this long cutover, or maybe years that you're doing this cutover, there's some period of time where you need things in sync and to be kept in sync bidirectionally. And Resilio Connect does that. Most data migration tools are not doing that. So Resilio Connect can be really useful for data migrations. But everybody needs to synchronize servers and storage, right? You need to synchronize this FAS and this AFF, or you need to sync between your FAS on-prem and ANF or GCNV or whatever storage solution in the cloud you're going to use. NetApp has awesome data synchronization tools, but not necessarily between every single one of their platforms. And so there's some holes that need to be filled. And so NetApp brings us in a lot of times to just help them get their deals done, right? Help them and their customers achieve getting the data where it needs to go. And so I've told you about syncing fast and slow, right? And so how does Resilio help you sync fast and slow? We go really fast, right? I just mentioned we can go 10 gigabits per second plus between individual agents. We can go really fast, but we can also scale it out. So we can scale it really fast. And that's partly because of our peer-to-peer architecture, our WAN acceleration protocol. We handle low bandwidth really incredibly well. We're very efficient with what we do send over the wire and what we don't send over the wire. But it's not always just about going fast. Sometimes it's about being reliable and being good at going over very slow connections, right? So that a lot of times is actually more difficult than going fast. And so Resilio Connect's going to help you go fast and slow. How do you sync big and small? Resilio Connect, we've got no file size limits. We can synchronize unlimited file sizes, right? The limit of file size that you're going to hit is going to be because of your file system, not because of Resilio Connect. Resilio Connect can handle multi-terabyte size files, hundreds of terabytes in size. We can handle massive capacity, not just really large files, but also really large data sets where you've got millions or even hundreds of millions of small files. And that is actually more challenging than handling one big file, right? Handling millions of small files. You guys know this, you're storage guys. Resilio Connect really differentiates itself in being able to handle many millions of small files, hundreds of millions of files. So when you need to sync lots of small files, other tools kind of fall down after maybe 9 million, 10 million files, something like that. Maybe if they're lucky, they're getting up to 30 million. We do hundreds of millions, no problem. And that's single agent, right? Again, we can scale it out and do even more. You're not syncing now, you're not syncing then. We can sync now and then, right? We do real time. So you are syncing now, real time synchronization all the time. And we can do this by getting change notifications in real time from the operating system or from the storage array if they support it. But we can also schedule synchronizations. If you want to sync every 10 minutes or if you want to sync once a day, we can do that too. You can have triggered synchronizations. You can kick it off in the API. You can kick it off through the GUI. You can configure these syncs to be in real time, constant synchronization or periodically. So we can sync now and then. You might not be syncing hot or cold data. We are syncing, we're hot, right? We're active, active, not just active, but active, right? Everywhere you want to sync. Of course, some customers don't want active or don't need it for a particular use case. They want active passive. We can do that too, no problem. And a really cool technology that we released called transfer priority came about from an F1 racing team, actually, where they had a very particular need. They said, okay, you're singing fast, great. But when we're at a race and the car comes into the pit, we need to get some files off that car really fast and back to our compute infrastructure back in the data center so we can do some really quick analysis and do some like in race optimization. And so it's really important that when the car comes in the pit, we get these specific files. Everything else stops. We just want these files to come really fast. And that's not something you can control with, a typical tool. Certainly not with something like a broad tool like SnapMirror or something like that, SRDF. So we actually developed, we're a pretty small, agile company, and we listen to customers and can design solutions like this that address very particular needs that happen to have a lot of value for a customer. And so now kind of the word's gotten out, and lots of racing teams are now very, very interested in this capability. So just an example of something kind of innovative that is possible. And maybe you need to sync cold data too, right? So the ability to sync from your hot on-prem, all flash array and sync that to some cold storage, right? Maybe you want to sync it up to S3 or Azure Blobs or something. We sync again between the files and objects. We do that translation for you. And so if you want to sync to some cold archive, no problem. Here and there, we sync everywhere, right? So if you want to do, again, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many, that's like the big differentiator. We can sync here and there, and that's all because of the peer-to-peer architecture, and we can sync anywhere and everywhere, right? It's like I said, no platform lock-in, no vendor lock-in, multi OS support, multi-file system support, any storage array, any storage platform that you want to synchronize to, we can do it. SMB, NFS, object, whatever, doesn't matter. We can sync between them all. Maybe you're syncing too much, right? And so you want to maybe be more efficient with what you synchronize. So that's where this transparent selective sync capability comes in, and just being able to sync exactly what you need on demand. And that's with our cache and gateway functionality. And maybe just caching hot files on a file server, but also, again, it's not just a server implementation. You can do this on your own device, and just sync the files you need on demand to your own laptop, which is, again, a game changer. Maybe you're not syncing enough, right? And usually that's because whatever data synchronization tool you're using is not real time. It's like periodic, right? It's I forget what SnapMirror, what the minimum is. Maybe it's every 5 minutes or 15 minutes. I forget. But if you're not syncing in real time, that means you're missing interstitial changes, right? You definitely have the capability to miss changes to files that happen in between those timestamps. So maybe you need to be syncing more. Maybe there is a need and value to synchronize more. And of course, we've got an archive folder, so the prior versions can be pulled out from an archive, kind of like the .snapshot folder on an app, if you're familiar with that. But if you need to sync more, we can do it for you. Maybe you're not syncing at all, and in that case, again, I don't have much help for you. I'll just give you this link to LinkedIn so you can reset your password. Maybe you needed to update your resume if you're not syncing at all. Please sync your data, and that's it, really. So you just heard me tell you all the ways you're syncing it wrong, conflicting ways that you might be syncing it wrong. And if I whet your appetite, the gears got turning. This tool sounds interesting, maybe for this use case or this customer, or maybe my department, or maybe my colleague's department. If you're interested to talk more and kind of see more of the product, we offer free trials. I'd love to have a conversation with you, or somebody on my team have a conversation with you and talk about your use case and answer more technical questions. We offer free trials. It's a super simple product, software only, so we get it installed for customers in about 45 minutes. It's that simple. If they've got infrastructure set up and ready to be used. You can get us at sales@resilio.com, or come to our website and fill out this form to schedule that. But I want you to just remember, Resilio is going to remove roadblocks. If you're NetApp sellers, or maybe you're resellers, VARs, or system integrators, or maybe you're the end user and you use NetApp technology and you've got these roadblocks to getting your projects done, Resilio can I hope be the tool that helps you remove those roadblocks and get it done. So thank you for your time. Again, I'm Josh, and you can email me at josh@resilio.com. I think we might have a few questions, and I ended with a few minutes to answer those questions. So let me turn it back over to Adam and see if we can't get some of these questions answered for you guys.
Yeah,
Adam?
sure. Thanks, Josh. Great job. Amazing. Let me just pull this up really quick. And great. So, Josh, I'll give you a second to take a look at the Q&As and start thinking about some responses to that. While you do that, I just want to remind everybody that we have a version of this on demand. Be ready about Thursday, maybe Friday of this week, but will be available on our website, resilio.com/events. And of course, we'll send you an email when that's available as well, so you can watch us at any time. No form required. It'll be right there on our website. And of course, we've posted a link here in the chat. Schedule a demo. You can go to our website, resilio.com/schedule-demo. To see this product, in working in real time and how it interacts specifically in your environment. I think we'll do a couple more questions. Josh, I think you've got them queued up, and you probably see a couple to
Yeah.
get started with.
Yeah, let's see here. Let's see. How long does trial period last? Great question. So, we get trials set up really quickly. Like I said, about 45 minutes typically. And then we like to check in with customers about once a week or so just to make sure everything's okay and that they're getting the most out of it. Sometimes customers are in a lot of pain and they need a lot of help really quickly. We can accommodate that. Most of our trials last, I don't know, 2 weeks or so. That's usually about all it takes for customers to sort of prove out the concept and see the value. But occasionally, we understand the different environments are different. So we can be kind of flexible when we need to. Some customers need a month or sometimes even more. Some trials are over in literally a day, and it can be really, really quick. So it's all over the map. On average, a couple of weeks. Um, let's see here. What makes Connect different from NetApp SnapMirror? Okay, so this one, let me point out a few main differences that I think are the key ones. So one is NetApp SnapMirror is point in time based data replication. So it's, your NetApp array is taking a snapshot at 12 o'clock and it's taking another snapshot at 12:15 and another snapshot at 12:30. And every time it takes a snapshot, it's going to replicate the diffs, the block level diffs, deduplicated, et cetera. But it's going to replicate the data as it existed at 12, and then it's going to replicate the data as it existed at 12:15, and again at 12:30, whenever you have it scheduled. So you're not replicating the changes that are happening between 12 and 12:15. It's like very much point in time. And that's a main difference. We do real-time synchronization. So if the file changes 100 times in those 15 minutes, we're going to synchronize the deltas of that file 100 times, right? So at all times, you've got a current version of that file at the other locations. Another difference is that SnapMirror is block-based and Resilio Connect is file-based. So we're replicating individual files where NetApp is replicating entire volumes. It takes a snapshot of a volume and it replicates the block changes of the entire volume. We can be much more precise, right? And just synchronize a file or a folder in a volume if we want to. Another key difference is that NetApp SnapMirror is sort of 1-to-1, or maybe at most it's 1-to-2, depending on how you architect it. And it's active passive. So it's active at the source and passive in any of the destinations if you have multiple destinations. And Resilio Connect can be active. It can be active passive if you want it that way. And it can be 1-to-1, or it can be many to many active. And that's a huge difference, where you can be making changes in all locations and they all stay in sync. Okay, so those are I think the three main differences between them. And by the way, NetApp Snap, we're talking about NetApp because we did this at NetApp Insight, but really most enterprise storage platforms have very similar data replication facilities. Speaking generally, of course, I totally understand that Dell EMC storage, maybe snapshots aren't as good as NetApp snapshots, or different, let's say different than NetApp snapshots, and their replication technologies are different than NetApp. But the broad point is generally the same. They're generally block-based replication tools. They're generally active passive, and they're generally 1-to-1, maybe 1-to-2, with a lot of extra money thrown in. Okay, let's see. I'm a reseller managing multiple customers. How would I use Connect to manage different customers at the same time, and storage systems besides NetApp? So great question. So I'm going to answer the last part first. Storage systems besides NetApp, because the answer is it doesn't matter the storage platform. We happen to do a lot of business with NetApp, where NetApp brings us into a lot of their opportunities. NetApp's a fantastic storage platform, and maybe we do more with them because they seem to be doing a lot in the cloud. And so a lot of their customers are sort of in this transition period of, or maybe expansion period where they're leveraging cloud resources in addition to their on-prem resources. But really, it doesn't matter. The storage platform doesn't matter. We sync anywhere with all the storage vendors, any SMB, NFS. If it's got a file system, we can sync it, or an object store. But so we do have resellers that, or really MSPs in this case, that sort of operate Resilio like as a service for their customers, and that's absolutely possible. And there's different ways you can handle that. If you'd like to talk more about that, please reach out. And I handle partnerships. I'm happy to discuss with you different ways that you as an MSP can service your customers with Resilio. Let's see. I see another question about SnapMirror, but I think I already answered it. Let's see. I think that's all we got so far. Yeah, I know we're a minute past, so we should probably wrap up. If you have any more questions, or would like to talk more in depth, again, please reach out. There's a link in the chat where you can come book a meeting with us and have a more in-depth conversation. We'd love to work with you.
Great, Josh. I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for this Resilio Connect webinar. We look forward to hearing from you soon and working with you even sooner. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.